Welcome back to Student Hub Live. Well, I'm really looking forward to this session called Delegating Your Chores, Managing Your Study Like a Manager, because I'm hoping to absolve all sorts of stress and strains to somebody else. And I'm delighted that Paul Ranford is the man to tell me how to do this. Paul, you've got some great ideas, to be fair. You're an associate lecturer and a proud graduate as well of the Open University. And I think that's really nice for people to know that people have studied and still live and tell the tale and come back and teach and write. In fact, you're the author of the finance block of our Level 1 business module B100.
Right. Students will be meeting me along the way.
Ah, good. Well, this is their first introduction. So, what does managing your study like a manager actually mean?
It means organising things properly. It means making sure you do things in the right order, covering all the ground. And sometimes that means prioritising, working out those things that you can do, those things that you can't do. Sometimes is going to, and I'll be talking about this a little later, sometimes that you'll be deciding for yourself that you just haven't got quite enough time. So working as a manager will mean prioritising, covering all the ground, but it's mainly taking responsibility. Every student needs to take responsibility for their own studies, and that's what managers do. So I'll start there.
I really like that whole sort of mindset. We've been talking a bit about mindset today, but the way that you're talking about this makes complete sense. You can think, oh yes, if I were telling someone else what to do, for example, I could give them advice. Prioritising thing gets in the way, shifting expectations, etc. But very seldom do I take that approach myself because it matters to me, because I'm doing something. How might students then get in that mindset and think, if I were managing my studies, what might I do? What tactics might I employ?
Yeah, the answer is practice. So every assignment that comes along, don't regard that as an end in itself. It's always a pathway. Yeah. It's a pathway to another assignment. You take some feedback from your tutor. Make sure that you take on board the feedback. Do better next time. And gradually, you'll get to the point where you regard this organisation will happen on its own because you've got so good at it as you work your way through.
But there's something interesting about the word manager, because it's not just a formula or a tool or a to-do list. A manager is able to ascertain the terrain, see what's happening, and as you say, reprioritise.
Yeah, but it's about, as I said, it's about taking responsibility for your own studies. No one else is going to do it for you. So somebody has to do the studying, and that's the student. So take responsibility for it. That's what a manager would do.
Perfect. So we've asked people at home, and we've got 2 word clouds for you. Remember that if you can only put 1 or 2 things in there, that's fine. Just put a full stop and your results will submit. For your study, what are your most important 3 priorities? You can have 1 or 2, as I say. And what are you most worried about in your studies? What things might get in the way? We'll try and unpick some of those later. Great. So please fill us in, and of course talk to Michelle, who's also working in the business school. She can answer a lot of your questions and reassure you generally. And hopefully stop talking about cake. Cake's gone. Delicious though, wasn't it?
Oh, that gingerbread was so nice.
Anyway, we're not talking about cake. Sorry.
Lots of things here. We've got lots of scientists, arts and humanities, a nice range of people. No one's popped up from the business and law yet, but interesting range of people.
Okay, so let's take a look to see what some of the important priorities there are for our students who are watching right now, and see what you make of these, Paul. So time is one of the most important things, but other things like family, mental health, deadline, organisations, compartmentalisation, delicate time, plan. So various things going on here about important things.
Can I talk? The most important thing that came with there, the one of the biggest letters, was time. Yeah. And we always get this. It's always this question of time management that students always say is going to be a problem. I think students need to understand that the amount of time available is plenty to do well. And sometimes you're going to need to compromise with time. Sometimes your assignment won't quite be as good as you would like it to be. Sometimes you're going to be letting an assignment go because we've got another one coming along, or you simply have a family event happening you have to go to. So sometimes the time has to be compromised. But the amount of time available to all students is plenty to do the work.
Okay, so we've talked a bit about the organisation, the time management, as you say, and even proper spaces for your study, and you've mentioned how important it is to take responsibility. But how can this whole idea of managing like a manager help students further? What other practical advice can you give people?
It's about giving yourself the best chance of success on a particular module. And I brought some management theory with me, and here it is. make sure I can get this okay for the
yes.
camera.
Very nice.
Okay, this is a bit of theory that we call Maslow. Don't worry about the name, it's just a label at the moment. And this theory is about motivation. It's about motivating yourself in your studies. And what Maslow said in this particular theory is that there are certain psychological needs, which are at the bottom end, physiological needs, which is not something that is ordinarily a problem for most students, but the one thing I would mention here is make sure that you are properly hydrated. Yes. So students should make sure they're properly hydrated in their studies. The next level up is safety. Again, not normally a problem for most students, but we do have students in the armed forces. Yeah. We have a few on submarines. Yeah. So the safety of their environment is sometimes something of a problem for them. Next level up, which is where motivation would happen for most of our students, would be this sense of belonging to a community, but also the idea of having family, friends, partner, other half, always on your side to help you with your studies. And that would lead next to this, this next level, which is called self-esteem. Self-esteem about achievements. Something about rewarding. I'd like to advise students to make up a little reward system. A reward for doing an assignment, you go out to dinner, a reward for answering a particular question, you have some Maltesers, whatever. And getting some recognition from your peers, from your family. If somebody comes in to you and says, that was a good achievement, good job, well done, it gives you a lot of motivation to carry on. And that will lead to the very top where I hope students will get to, which is about studying for studying's own sake. The thing about the Maslow theory as we teach it is that stuff up here is not motivational unless the things down here have been filled in. But we'll be teaching students that on B100 when they get to it.
Brilliant. So a really popular model and really nice, and as you say, it's about the building blocks and about making sure that things are in place so that you can move on to different levels.
Sorting out the bottom levels so to make sure that the higher levels are motivational, that's right.
Okay, so you've mentioned this whole idea about taking responsibility, which is a really, really important concept. What does that really mean, though? Does this mean that students need to sort of just get on and do things no matter what?
Well, that's an excellent question, and it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that students are on their own.
Right.
It means that there is, within the OU, and any manager will say, there needs to be support available. And there is plenty of support available for Open University students. Yeah. They will have a tutor to whom they can go for any information, any concerns about the module. There is a support team to whom they can go more or less at any time. They can email them at any time for information on what to do about their course or about their career choices. There are the materials. I wanted to show these. I'm not going to open any, but here are the B100 books, for example. There's a lot of them. It does look extremely daunting. But we feed them to you piecemeal. You work through online. Very nice, by the way. Yes. We work through an online set of exercises to help you make sense of what's in the books. And the final thing I want to point out here is this particular piece of this little fly, which comes with the books. Most students will have this already. There's a lot of students already on the cafe who are saying, I don't know where to start. Where do I start? Start here. Read me first, and work your way through that. That's where you start, and that will take you straight into the module, and you'll be fine.
Perfect. Michelle, how's everyone at home?
Well, it's really interesting. We have such a range of study areas and also study motivations. So we have some people who are looking at career changing, some people are looking at career progression. So that's really interesting. So someone who's currently a care assistant but looking at going into nursing. We've got people who are studying mathematics and astrophysics, biology, arts and humanities. So it's really nice to see. And people are really interested in what Paul's saying. Some of them have seen the Maslow's structure before, some haven't. And then the last bit of conversation has gone to how do you relax? You know, how we talk about reward system, but also how do you really relax if you've always got study tensions or stress?
Yeah. Do you have any advice on that?
I do. It is important to turn off. It's important to have some time to yourself, to spend some time with family, to be able to respond to family members. It's important to take a rest. And we do get students who are doing not just 60 points, but doing either 90 points or 120 points, full-time study, and trying to do a job as well. Very important for those students to be able to take some time away from their studies, take a breath, take a breather, and that allows the studies to filter into we use the word internalise. It allows your studies to be internalised whilst you're resting.
And I'm just mindful of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how individual and diverse our student population are. And just that's the whole thing about, you mentioned safety and belonging, and those might mean different things for different people. But you also have been talking a little bit about space to study. Yeah. And I'm really interested in that whole idea, because I think very often we have these concepts of what studying looks like and what it should look like. But you advocate things like snatching pieces of time and studying on the train.
Yep. I did that.
Yeah.
So it's entirely possible to study almost anywhere. And I used to study on the train.
Yeah.
I used to commute to London, 40 minutes each way. I'd get my books out, and there's a lot of noise, but that noise fades away into the background when you're studying. So long as it is constant noise, you can filter it out. In the ideal world, the space, not everybody has the ideal world of a nice desk, sitting at home with bookshelves here. Sometimes you have children running around, and so finding those little scraps of time in order to do some study, very important to identify and to use them profitably.
Yeah, perfect. Now, prioritising was one thing you started by talking about, and I wanted to return to that whole idea. How might students go about doing that, and why is prioritising so important?
It's important because there comes a point in anybody's life that life takes a left turn, that you need to be able to prioritise what is the important thing in your life and deal with it. Sometimes that will mean it's not your studies. There is a little rule in business. It's called the Pareto rule. Students will know it better as the 80-20 rule, in that the 20% of the efforts will produce 80% of the result.
Yes.
And sometimes that means you have to recognise when that's the time when you need just the 20% of the effort, because you have family issues to deal with, there's been something happened at work, you need to focus on that. Sometimes you have to let your assignment go. Let it go when it's good enough.
Yes.
There's no such thing as a perfect assignment, no such thing as, at least not in business studies, no such thing as a perfect result. Recognise when it's good enough, let it go. Make sure you get the marks that are available, even on a limited timescale. Move on to the next one.
So like a manager operating a business, not everything has to be perfect.
Precisely,
as long as things are ticking over and keeping moving, then that is the main objective. But I think sometimes it's easy to lose sight of that, isn't it?
Precisely like a manager. That's what a manager must do all the time. Continually prioritise, make sure that there's no, the time is not being spent on things which are not really important at that particular moment. Get back to them. Sometimes you've got to finish off a job, let it go. And that, in the life of an open university student, will mean their assignments.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I really like this session, Paul. Thank you so much for coming along. Some really practical, useful ideas here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on next to my computer, what would a manager do? Because sometimes it's hard for me to make those decisions. But if I were to think like a manager, I'm sure I'd give myself some pretty sound advice, which I wouldn't be able to necessarily give myself when I really want to do the best job I possibly can, but maybe don't have the time to do it.
Right.
Thank you very much. Michelle,
Thank
are you
you.
all right?
Yes, we've got Tala, who has 2 TMAs coming up, one on the 25th and one on the 26th. So good luck to Tala on that one. Beverly says that she's studying in shorter bursts because she gets quite tired, but she is getting help from her tutor. And I think that's a really good reminder to always talk to your tutor as soon as something starts to happen, rather than waiting till the last minute and having problems. And Shirley says she's taking over her dining room. So she started just on the table, but now she's taken over the entire dining room with her study materials.
Perfect. I hope the family can eat.
Yes, or they won't go very far up their hierarchy of needs.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. That's the way to look at it.
Brilliant. Well, there's heaps of advice for you on the Student Hub Live website, and one of the sections that we would like to point your attention to is the study skills topics. So you can go and take a look there, and there's all sorts of things around time management and prioritising, and a really helpful time planner as well, if you'd like to take a look at that also. Well, thank you very much, Paul Ranford. Our next session, after this short campus tour break, is about assessment, a really, really important thing. But we're going to talk about calmly doing it well. So we're going to be taking some of Paul's ideas and thinking about how we might implement them when it comes to our tutor-marked assessments. So join me after this next campus tour, where we will be showing you around the library from our next session with Jess Hughes and Rob Moore. See you in a minute.